Hi everybody, and welcome to my very first Patreon tutorial. First, I would like to say thank you for supporting me and my art journey. This means so much to me, you guys don't have any idea. So what we're working on first is we're going to work on this giant cheese board, and this thing is massive, you guys. It is super thick, it is super heavy, and I want to take a minute to show you the back of this, because working with cheese boards takes some special preparation. You want to protect any part of this board that you don't want to get resin on it. So you can see here I've got the whole back taped off. I've added plastic and taped that on. I've cut out the holes where it hangs from. And I've got this, and to make sure that you get your tape down really well, all you need to do is take a popsicle stick and just rub it along all of your edges. And this will help immensely in keeping that resin out of places that you don't want it to touch. Okay? And you just want to go all the way around. And of course, I've done this already once. You just want to burnish that down really well. Okay? So that's your first step. Once you've got your back, and if you're not going to have resin on the sides, you can also tape your sides the exact same way. Then your next step is to kind of think about what you want to do. And on this cheese board, I think I'm going to have my resin at the top come down this way. And then at the bottom, down here, it will come up this way, so that I will still have a large portion of this with no resin on it at all. So what I like to do, guys, when I mix my resin is I will set it aside for a few minutes and let it rest. And you can see all the bubbles that come to the top. And then to release those bubbles, all you have to do is give it a quick shot of heat with your heat gun. And that will pop all of those bubbles before you ever get started on whatever it is you're working on. See there, that got rid of a lot of bubbles just by itself. So guys, the colors we're going to be starting with today are pretty simple. I have my Langridge Titanium White. And this actually comes as a powder. And here is the jar of powder. And this is the Langridge. I'll show that to you. This is a very true white. And to make it into a paste, you just mix it with your epoxy, the part A of your resin. Not the hardener, but the epoxy itself. And if you'd like to see a video on how I do this, I can show you that. But you make this really, really thick paste. Okay? We're also going to be using the Counterculture DIY in mica white. This is a very true white, and I really like it. We're going to start with those two. And this is probably going to take at least 2 layers, maybe even 3 before we're done. But the first layer I want to keep pretty simple. I want to have some different textures and finishes in my resin. This is why we're combining this titanium white. This is a very opaque white. This is what you would use to make cells with. And then this mica white to go with it. Okay, so let's get started here. So my resin has been resting, and I need a couple of decent sized cups for this. So we're going to get out the 6-inch cups. And these are just your standard, buy them at Walmart cups, guys. They're nothing fancy, nothing special. We're going to put some resin in each one, and we're going to get started. And I'm going to fill each of these about, oh, I don't know, not quite halfway up, I guess. I may have to mix more, and that's okay. We can mix more. Just like so. And now for this paste, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of that on the end of my popsicle stick. And this is very dense. And I'm going to drop that in there. And then you want to stir it in very well. And as you stir, that will start to dispense and mix with your resin. You can see it there, it's already starting. And like I said, this is a very opaque white, and because it's so opaque, it's very dense and heavy. And that's part of why we use it to make cells. And I'm really not that concerned about cells at this point on this piece. I just want to get down a basis for this, get some color on this board and get the first layer on here. So you can see there how dense that color is and how opaque that white is, and that's what we want. Gonna set that aside. And now we're gonna mix up our mica white. Again, that is from Counterculture DIY. And I also want this to be fairly opaque, so I'm gonna put quite a bit in there. Probably like more than I need, honestly, but that's okay. And I will show you guys too, in a later video, how to get cells with your pigment powders and your mica powders. It is possible to do. You guys have seen my work. You know that I get cells with my micas and my pigments. So I will show you how that's done. And guys, if you have something you want to see me do, please, you know, drop me a message, shoot me a text. You guys all have my cell phone number now because you are my patrons. You can reach out to me anytime via text. Okay, we want to get this mica stirred in really well as well. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. There we go. Okay, so what I want to start with, guys, I want to start with the top side of it first. And I'm going to start with some of my opaque white. And you want to kind of, for this first layer, you don't have to really obsess over where the resin goes. I want a good amount of each color. So the first thing I want to do is kind of draw my border where I'm planning for this resin to more or less stop, and it will spread. But it will go farther than where I pour it because, you know, resin spreads. That's what resin does. I think I want to switch here and go with the mica. Now that I've got that first bit down. And like I said, guys, this is just the first coat. We're going to put this down. We're going to get some movement through here. And we'll go from there. I really love this Counterculture mica, guys. Their products are super nice. And no, I'm not being paid to say that. Okay. Let's come back in with some of this opaque white now. The two are the same color, but they're different finishes. Because, of course, the opaque is just a plain color. It doesn't sparkle or shine. And the mica is a very shiny white. It's got that mica in there that makes it glisten. Okay. And just take your time with this, guys. Don't get in a rush. There's no reason to rush through this process. Take your time and enjoy yourself. Your art should be for you. You should always make art that makes you happy. Okay. So we've got the basics down there. So now I'm going to get my torch and I'm going to blow out some bubbles. And this is just a basic butane torch, you guys. You don't need anything really special for this. If it blows a flame out the end, you're good. I mean, honestly, that's really it. And I want to move this just a little bit. Make sure I've got that good and warm. And now I'm going to take my heat gun to it. And honestly, guys, this is my favorite heat gun. I have one of the really big ones that I almost never use because I like this one. It's got a nice tip. It's easy to control, and it's easy to keep the air going where I want it to. You can see I just hold that there and get it warm and blow that across. Just like that. I'm going to come over here to this side and bring it back this way. And I'm going to blow that white mica up over top of that opaque. And like I said, guys, at this point, we're just really putting a base down. I want to just get some color on this board. And then in our second layer, we will start to do more of the detail. Right now, I just really want to get my resin down. And let's heat that up with our torch again. Just like so. And we're going to blow it over the top. Now, you don't have to blow it to the side, guys. I think this one, I'm also going to show you this where I just blow almost straight up and down on it. Because this will give you a little bit different look. It's not a huge difference. But you can see what that does by comparison. Okay. Now I've got these resin drippings and I don't want to waste it. And I want to get some resin here on the sides. So I'm just going to scoop that up off of my plastic table cover. And I'm just going to more or less paint it on with my popsicle stick. Just kind of smearing it on. That will get those sides covered. A lot of it will drip off, but that's okay. And guys, I'm always saying on my different videos to start with what you have. Start where you are with what you have. You can't expect to be a master at this right off the bat. Heck, I've been doing this for over a year now, just over a year. And I am nowhere close to a master, nor do I claim to be. That's just not how it works. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. And my hope is that I can help you learn some of the things that I've learned over the course of the last year and help you progress with your art. And I could have made all of this into tutorials. And you guys know some of those tutorials sell for, shoot, hundreds of dollars. But I wanted to make this accessible to as many people as possible. I just did. I don't need to make, you know, $300, $400, $500 for a single set of tutorials. I want to make art accessible. I want to encourage you. And you guys, you can see I'm just scooping it up off the table and putting it back on the board. Because again, this is just the first layer. You don't have to obsess over this. You don't have to feel like if it's not perfect, you have failed. You have not failed. Give yourself permission to not be perfect. None of us are perfect. The main goal of this first layer is to get resin on the board. Get that color on the board, get it more or less the shape that we want it to have when we're done. So there's no point to beating yourself up if it's not picture perfect on the first layer, because it never is. Okay. Guys, in case you're wondering, those pauses are while I walk around my table. I'm lucky that I've got a big enough space I can work from either side of my table. Okay, there we go. Now, you can see all the little strings and things. I want to use my torch and get all those bubbles out. You guys can see there's a ton of bubbles in this. So let's do that. There we go. And now I'm going to actually give that some heat texture. Just add texture to it using just my torch. And then I'm going to stop and look at it and see where I might need to improve. See, this area here is kind of boring. So let's add some mica to that area there and liven that up some, shall we? I'm just going to put that on like that. Just like so. And then I'm going to torch it again. And I think I'll take my heat gun and I'm going to maybe spread it that way a little. Okay. Now to get those texture to really pop, I'm going to go ahead and torch it again. You want to be careful not to scorch your resin when you do this. That resin will scorch. It will actually boil if you're not careful. And that looks good to me for the first layer, guys. I'm going to let this sit. And as it sits, because this is a wood board, I will get more bubbles up through that resin. And as I start to notice bubbles forming, I will torch it again real quick. I will probably torch this a minimum of 6 or 8 times over the course of the next half an hour, 40 minutes. Because I can already see little bubbles forming coming up out of that wood. Okay, and this is what happens when you have an unfinished wood surface. You will have those bubbles come up. Okay, I don't paint my cheese boards before I pour on them. You certainly can. You can seal the area you intend to cover with some polyacrylic. I don't do that. I pour on them, and the first layer is, to me, is to just get that base color down and get that wood sealed off. So that means I have to pay attention and I have to keep torching this. So now I'm going to move the camera. Give me just a minute here and we're going to do the other end of this. Okay guys, there we are. Got the camera reset, I think. And Now this one, I kind of want to do the opposite. So at the top, this side is the thick edge and this side is the thin edge. So at the bottom, I'm going to reverse that so that the two pieces kind of look like they go together. So this, I'm going to do the thin edge here and the taller edge here, but I don't want this one very large. This is going to be a much smaller area that gets covered. Okay, so this time I'm going to show you a new way to do this, or another way. It's not new. And I am going to start with all of my opaque at once. Okay, so I am going to put down all of this opaque white at one time. Now remember, if I need to add a little more later, I still can. There's nothing saying I can't add some. And we can kind of play around with this because as you know, this is just the first layer. Now, once again, I'm going to get my heat gun. We want to get those bubbles out. See there? Get that resin heated up a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to add some mica into it. Here's our mica white. And we're going to add this right in. And again, this is the first layer. We don't have to obsess over, is it perfect? Okay? We just don't. I do want to kind of follow the same lines for the most part. Make them cross and meet and fan out. Make some of them whiter than others. Just so it has a really natural look to it. Okay, now we're going to torch this. There we go. Want to get those bubbles out. Want to heat up that resin. And again, you want to be really careful not to overheat your resin. We don't want to scorch it. Let's take this heat gun, move that around. Really get some nice effects going here. You can see those bubbles rising up out of that wood like we talked about. See right there? Okay. Now, just like we did it on the other end, I'm going to pick this resin up off the table and I'm going to put it over the edges because on this one, I want the edges to have resin. You don't have to. If you don't like this look or you prefer it without, you can tape those off and not have any resin on your edges. But for this one, I'm kind of liking the resin on the edges. And with your cheese boards, guys, it's important to remember that some cheese boards come pre-oiled. And if they do, you're going to have to do a little extra work to remove that oil off of your cheese board before you start pouring resin on them, okay? This cheese board did not come pre-oiled, and I prefer to buy them without the oil on them because it just makes pouring the resin on them easier. If they have oil on them and you don't try to get as much off as possible, your resin will peel. It will not stick. It will peel off. And that's no good. That is no bueno, y'all. Okay. So I've got that one. Now our last step that we're going to do here on these, I need a small cup, just like this one here. And I need just a little bit of resin in it. I don't need a whole cup full. just like so. And I'm actually going to stir in some glitter, and my current favorite glitter, you guys, is the Counterculture DIY Sterling Snow. This is my bomb glitter of the moment. I love this stuff. And we wouldn't really even have to put any glitter in the first layer, but I love this glitter so much, I'm going to do it because I love it that much. And I'm going to stir that in. But I'm not going to add it yet, you guys. We're going to take a little break. We're going to let my resin firm up for, oh, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, maybe a little longer. And then I'll be back, and we're going to put some strings of glitter through this. Now, we could put it in now, but honestly, it's just going to spread out and go everywhere, and I don't want that. So I'm going to let this resin firm up and start to dry and get thick, and I'm going to let the resin on my board do the same thing. So I'll be back in just a bit, guys. Okay, we're back here. I've let this sit for, yeah, probably 20 minutes. And I had to remix a little bit for my glitter because it sat in the cup. It got really hot, and when I went to pull it up, it was just a blob. So don't do that. Oh, so I've mixed up a little bit of new, and I am just going to drizzle this any place where I think that some sparkle would be nice. I am going to try to kind of follow the lines that I've got going here in my resin, so that again it looks like it is following a pattern and that it looks as natural as it can. And even though we're going to put a second layer on this, guys, I still want to do this because it just, when we put the next layer on, we'll use colors that are more transparent, and you will see how that glitter will actually pop right up through, and you'll be able to see bits of it coming up from underneath, and I think that's a really nice look. So yes, a portion of this will get covered up later, but it will still peek through, and I like the way that looks. Okay, I think we need some up here in the corner, and just kind of look at it, see the natural way that the resin is moving, and just kind of make your glitter lines follow that movement. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to move the camera, and we're going to do the opposite end of the board as well. So give me just a minute here, please. Okay, here we go. We're all set up to do this end. And I want to show you this when I'm talking about going with the lines that are in the resin. If you look here, you can see a definite pattern in the resin. And here. And again here. I want to kind of follow those. I don't want to go against those because it will look odd. So I want to kind of follow those lines that are already in the pattern. So that it looks like it's going in the same direction as the resin is going. If it goes in a different way, it will look unnatural. It will fight against each other, and we don't want that. Okay. Kind of like going with the flow, y'all. And you just literally drizzle that off the end of your popsicle stick. It's that simple. Just like that. And it helps if your lines aren't all exactly the same width. If you make some spots thicker than others, again, it will just look like it flows naturally that way a little better, I think. That's how I like to do it. So you want some spots that are thinner than others. And again, guys, just take your time, enjoy this. And this is the Counterculture DIY Sterling Snow glitter that I'm using. I think I told you earlier, this is my favorite glitter. I love it. No, I'm not being paid to say that or to use it. They didn't send it to me free. I buy this glitter because I'm like totally addicted to it. And here I am. I'm also going to drizzle that down the edges. I want that to be down the sides as well. So I'm just going to drizzle it down the side. Super easy, guys. And I think that's going to be our first layer. I think we've got that pretty well covered. It needs to dry and to cure down. And I will be back and we'll do the next layer together.